The forest between Duskwood and Ravenmoor had known blood for 3 generations. Every tree along the border still remembered the sound of claws and the smell of fear. The 2 wolf kingdoms had fought over land, over pride, and over old wounds that never fully closed. But on this particular morning, the forest was quiet. Quiet, because for the first time in decades, a wedding was about to happen instead of a war. Illyra Vantane stood in front of a tall mirror in a small stone room, watching a stranger stare back at her. The woman in the mirror wore a pale silver gown stitched with moonflowers, her dark hair braided with silver thread. She looked calm, she looked ready, but inside, her heart was pounding like a war drum. She was the daughter of Ravenmoor's Beta, and today, she would marry Cale Draven, the exiled war chief of Duskwood, a man once known as the greatest rival of the Alpha King himself. Their marriage was not born from love. It was born from a treaty, a fragile promise meant to stop 2 packs from tearing each other apart. "You look beautiful," her mother said softly, adjusting the veil over Illyra's shoulders. "This marriage will save lives, Illyra. Remember that." Illyra nodded, though her throat felt tight. She had agreed to this. She had told herself 100 times that peace was worth any sacrifice. But there was one truth she had never spoken aloud, not even to herself in the quiet hours of the night. Years ago, at a moonlit border crossing, she had met a young alpha named Ronan Ashgrave. It had only been a few minutes, a few words exchanged beneath the silver light, but something had passed between them that night, something she still could not explain. A pull, a warmth that settled deep in her chest and never quite left. She had not seen him since. Their packs were enemies, and their families forbade any contact. She told herself it meant nothing, just 2 strangers under one moon. But her wolf remembered. Her wolf had never let it go. Across the border, in the great hall of Duskwood, Ronan Ashgrave stood at his window, staring out at the mountains. He had ruled as Alpha King for 5 years, keeping his territory strong and his people safe. He had faced enemies, negotiated treaties, and buried friends lost to old wars. But nothing had prepared him for the news that reached him this morning. Illyra Vantane was getting married. To Cale Draven, his enemy, the man who had once tried to kill him in single combat, leaving a scar across his ribs that never fully faded. Ronan told himself it did not matter. She was not his. She never had been. They had spoken once, years ago, and it should have meant nothing. But his wolf disagreed. His wolf had known the truth the moment their eyes met that night by the border stream. She was his mate, and now, she belonged to someone else. He clenched his jaw and turned away from the window, trying to push the feeling down. A king did not chase what could never be his. A king honored treaties, even when they cost him something he could not name. But deep inside, his wolf howled in silence, refusing to accept what fate had allowed. The wedding took place in the neutral grounds between the 2 territories, a wide meadow surrounded by ancient trees. Representatives from both packs gathered, their faces a mixture of hope and unease. Peace was fragile, and everyone knew one wrong move could shatter it. Cale Draven stood at the front, tall and confident, his dark eyes sharp with satisfaction. To the packs watching, he looked like a man honored to be marrying into peace, but those who knew him well saw something colder beneath his calm expression, a quiet hunger that had nothing to do with love. Illyra walked down the aisle slowly, her steps steady despite the storm inside her. She kept her eyes forward, refusing to let anyone see her fear. When she reached Cale, he took her hand with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. The ceremony began, words of unity, words of peace. Illyra repeated her vows in a clear, steady voice, though every word felt heavier than the last. And then, just as she spoke her final vow, a sound rang out across the meadow, a long, powerful howl, filled with pain and longing, echoing from beyond the trees. Every wolf in the crowd froze. They knew that howl. It belonged to the Alpha King. Whispers spread through the gathering like wildfire. A king's howl during another wolf's wedding was no small thing. Among their kind, such a howl was a sign, a cry from a wolf whose bond had just been threatened. Illyra's chest tightened, her wolf stirring uneasily beneath her skin. Cale's hand tightened around hers, hard enough to make her flinch. "Ignore it," he muttered under his breath. "It means nothing." But it did mean something. Elira could feel it in her bones. In the days that followed, life in Duskwood settled into an uneasy rhythm. Elira moved into Cale's territory as his wife, trying to adjust to a life she had chosen for the sake of peace. But peace, she quickly learned, was not the same as safety. Cale was polite in public, always careful to appear the gracious husband in front of his people. But behind closed doors, his patience wore thin quickly. He grew irritated by small things, quick to criticize, quick to remind her that she belonged to him now. Elira told herself it was simply the stress of two packs adjusting to unity. She told herself it would get better with time. But the coldness in his eyes never quite matched his words. Meanwhile, Ronan buried himself in his duties, training his warriors, meeting with council members, doing everything he could to keep his mind occupied. But no matter how busy he stayed, his wolf refused to settle. At night, when the moon rose high above Duskwood's mountains, he would feel a pull in his chest, a quiet ache that told him something was wrong, not with him, with her. He told himself it was not his place to interfere. She had made her choice, but the feeling would not leave him alone. One evening, weeks after the wedding, Ronan received a message from one of his scouts patrolling near the border. Lady Elira had been seen walking alone near the river at dusk, far from the safety of Duskwood's main territory. It was unusual. Wolves rarely wandered that far without an escort, especially a newly married alpha's wife. Something in Ronan's chest twisted with concern he could not ignore. Against his better judgment, he made his way toward the river himself. He found her sitting on a large stone by the water, her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the current. She looked smaller than he remembered. The confidence she once carried dimmed beneath something heavier. When she noticed him, she quickly wiped her eyes and stood, startled. "Ronan," she said softly, her voice catching slightly, "you shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," he replied gently. "Not alone, not this far from your pack." She looked away, embarrassed. "I needed air." He studied her for a long moment, noticing the faint shadows under her eyes, the way her shoulders sat tense even in stillness. "Elira, is everything all right?" She hesitated, and in that hesitation, he saw the truth she was too proud to say out loud. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a while. "I'm fine," she said finally, though her voice lacked conviction. Ronan wanted to press further, wanted to demand the truth, but he held himself back. He had no right to interfere in her marriage, no matter what his wolf screamed inside him. Instead, he simply said, "If you ever need anything, Elira, you know where to find me." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for a brief moment, the walls around her heart cracked just slightly. "Thank you," she whispered. He left before his wolf could convince him to stay longer than he should. As the weeks passed, whispers began to spread through both packs. Some warriors from Duskwood noticed how Cale's mood soured whenever Elira's name came up in conversation with Ronan's territory. Others noticed how Elira seemed to withdraw more and more, her once bright spirit dimming under the weight of a marriage that offered little warmth. Cale, sensing the growing unease, tightened his control. He limited who Elira could speak with, reminded her constantly of her duty to the peace treaty, and grew colder each time her name was mentioned alongside Ronan's. It became clear, at least to those who paid close attention, that Cale's interest in this marriage had little to do with love and much to do with power. Marrying Elira had given him leverage, a way to humiliate the Alpha King who once defeated him in combat, a chance to prove his dominance without lifting a single claw. Elira began to see it too, slowly piecing together the truth she had tried to ignore. This marriage was never about peace for Cale. It was about pride. The turning point came with the arrival of the sacred moon, a rare celestial event, spoken of in old wolf legends, appearing only once every few generations. Under its light, true mate bonds were said to reveal themselves completely, undeniable to anyone who witnessed it. Packs across the region prepared for the ritual gathering, a tradition meant to honor fate and strengthen unity among wolves. Both Duskwood and Ravenmoor were required to attend, standing together as a symbol of their fragile peace. Elira dreaded the gathering, sensing that something was about to change, though she could not explain why. On the night of the sacred moon, wolves from both territories gathered in the same meadow where Elira's wedding had taken place months before. The sky above was clear. stars scattered across a deep violet expanse, waiting for the moon to rise. Kale stood beside Alira, his grip firm on her arm, a silent reminder of his control. Ronan stood across the meadow with his own counsel, his eyes drawn to her despite every effort to look away. As the moon began to rise, full and silver, a hush fell over the crowd. The old stories said that when the sacred moon reached its peak, true bonds would shine visibly between mates, a soft glow only wolves could see, impossible to fake or hide. Alira felt a strange warmth building in her chest. As the moonlight grew stronger, she glanced toward Kale, waiting for some sign of connection, some proof that her sacrifice had meant something. But nothing happened. No warmth, no glow, just silence between them. Then, across the meadow, she felt it. A pull so strong it nearly knocked the breath from her lungs. Her eyes turned instinctively toward Ronan, and in that instant, a soft golden light began to shimmer between them, faint at first, then growing brighter with every heartbeat. Gasps spread through the crowd. Wolves from both packs stared in stunned silence as the unmistakable glow of the sacred moon confirmed what many had already suspected. Alira Vantane and Ronan Ashgrave were true mates. Kale's face twisted with fury and humiliation. "This is impossible," he snapped, his composure finally breaking in front of the entire gathering. "She is my wife." But the old laws of the sacred moon were absolute. No treaty, no vow, no forced marriage could override a true bond revealed under its light. The elders from both packs stepped forward, their expressions grave but certain. The marriage, built on politics rather than fate, could not stand against what the moon had confirmed. As the truth settled over the crowd, whispers turned into open accusations. Warriors who had grown suspicious of Kale's treatment of Alira finally spoke up, revealing the coldness and control he had shown behind closed doors. The peace he claimed to protect had never truly mattered to him. He had used Alira as a tool, a means to weaken Ronan and secure his own standing. Disgraced in front of both territories, Kale was stripped of his claim and cast out from the gathering, his ambitions crumbling beneath the weight of his own deception. Ronan crossed the meadow slowly, his eyes never leaving Alira. When he reached her, he gently took her hand, the golden glow between them settling into a warm, steady light. "I should have said something sooner," he admitted quietly. "I let fear and duty keep me silent." Alira's eyes filled with tears, though for the first time in months, they were not tears of sorrow. "I didn't think you felt it too," she whispered. "I never stopped," he said. "Not once." Under the full light of the sacred moon, surrounded by both packs who had once been enemies, Ronan and Alira completed the mating bond, a connection recognized by every wolf present as undeniable truth. The howl that rose from Ronan's chest that night was no longer filled with longing or pain, but with relief and joy, echoed by Alira's own voice rising beside his. In the months that followed, the union between Ronan and Alira did what years of treaties and forced peace never could. It brought Duskwood and Ravenmoor together, not through fear or obligation, but through a bond neither pack could deny. Warriors who once fought along the border now trained side by side. Families who had lost loved ones to old wars slowly began to heal, finding common ground in the new alliance, forged not by politics, but by fate itself. Alira often thought back to that first meeting by the border stream, the brief moment that had planted a seed neither of them dared to nurture. She realized now that fate had never truly let them go, no matter how many years or how many battles stood between them. And every year, when the sacred moon rose high above the mountains, the packs of Duskwood and Ravenmoor gathered together, not in preparation for war, but in celebration of the bond that finally brought them peace. A peace built not on forced promises, but on a love too strong for any rivalry to break.